Hi, Jim Humphrey from Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training here again with another look inside a unique historic firearm, the Smith Wesson Single Action Revolver. This revolver is a variation of the Model 1.5 Smith & Wesson. Being the third issue of that model, it was the first centerfire version, and it marked the debut of the .32 Smith & Wesson cartridge. It was known as the Single Action Revolver in its day. I don't pretend to be an expert in these early model revolvers, and I find the naming conventions a little puzzling because earlier issues of this model were tip-up actions. However, with the exception of caliber, this model seems to have more in common with the later Model 2. But we're not here to ponder why it's called what it's called. Let's have a look inside. Disassembly isn't too hard, so let's skip that bit. There are a couple of tricks, but I'll show you those during assembly. So let's have a look at the parts nomenclature. We have the barrel group, which is the barrel catch cam, the barrel catch and its screw. Then we have the cylinder group. The cylinder group is the extractor pin spring, the cylinder, and the extractor. And then we have the extractor cam and the joint pivot and screw. We have the hammer group, which has the hand spring, and the hammer, and then the frame and the mainspring. Then we have the trigger group. It has a couple of pins and a screw. It has the cylinder stop spring, the cylinder stop, the trigger and its spring, and then the cylinder stop plate. And we have the side plate with its two screws, and the grip panels and their screw. Let's start with the cylinder group. On the ejector star, one of the arms has a very small indentation on it, and that's a marker to tell us how to align the ejector, and it aligns with the serial number leg on this end of the cylinder. So when I put it back in, I have to make sure I orient it correctly. The extractor spring is held in place by the extractor pin. Like most older model revolvers, it's a right-hand thread on this extractor pin. So I have to be careful to put the barrel catch cam back in its hole in the correct orientation before I install the barrel catch. The barrel catch has the rear sight on the top of it, so it's easy to see how to orient it, and it's held in place with the barrel catch screw. This is a screw, so I want to be careful not to hammer it, obviously, or wreck the threads. I install the cylinder by threading it onto the base pin. I have to pull the barrel catch out of the way and slide it down, and then just give it a slight right-hand turn, and it'll thread right on the base pin. To get it off, I had to put a little bit of pressure on the cylinder, push up on it, and then thread it. But to the left, and it threads right off. This little extension on the extractor cam goes up the inside so it can engage the extractor pin. The hand is attached to the hammer on this firearm, and the hand spring, it's this flat leaf spring, fits up inside underneath this retaining pin. It has to be pushed back in to kind of lock it in. Now this one's kind of worn out. It didn't have much length on it, but to insert it, there's a little half cam on the back of the hand, and you put it in, rotate it, and I push it in, and it snaps in place. And it holds, and it is spring loaded, but in order to get it to install, I got to push it back and drop it down into position. Once the hammer is all the way down, then the hand can be pushed and it should snap into place. There it goes, into that slot in the breech face. So next I'll install the hand spring, that cover plate, and the trigger. I've also got a little brass pin here for helping line parts up. The trigger engages the bottom of the hammer. I'll use this brass pin to hold it temporarily. The hand fits into a little slot here and it has its own retaining pin. With the hand in place, I can back this temporary pin out and put the trigger pin through. The cylinder stop spring has a slight curve on it, so that the concave side of it goes down, and it lines up with this screw hole. That'll hold the cylinder stop in place, good spring. The stop plate goes on over it and has a very tight fit. Now, to get these type plates off, you usually just tap on the frame a little bit. These kind of plates will come loose. You can pop them off. That goes to the side plate as well. But anyway, it's held in place with this screw. I found in order to install the mainspring, I had to back the hammer back out just a little bit. The pins that hold the grips kind of got in the way. Plus in this one, the tension screw was too tight to loosen up, so I had to force this spring around it. The side plate goes on pretty straightforward, but on this side plate, on the back of it, there was a wire spring that was attached. It's something that was done aftermarket, I think, because the main handspring had worn, and this little spring would push on the hand, so it had to be kind of pushed in and lined up with that. And then there's two screws. There's a long one in back and a short one up front. Once those side plate screws are tightened down, I can do a quick function check here. Notice this is a single action revolver, so cock and release seems to be working fine. The joint pivot pin has to be lined up using this mark because there's a little key on it that lines up with a groove in the frame. So they put marks in both the frame and the pin. So the two halves of the frame back together, I'll twist the joint pin to line up the marks and then press it into place. And then it's retained with a screw on the far side. And last but not least, reinstall the grips. And that should be pretty much it. Everything's back in order. Very nice little revolver. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I'm Jim Humphrey from Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Thanks for watching.